Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Bert Clark, and you're listening to the SA Matters radio show with Rich Gassaway. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello, and welcome to episode 43 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of the show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple: to help you see the bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. Today's episode is going to be presented in two parts because the lessons were so important that I didn't want to cut the conversation short. So next week, episode 44, will be the second part of the interview. I'm really excited today because I have with me as a guest Asheville Fire Chief Scott Burnette. Chief Burnette began his career as a firefighter in the city of Asheville in 1995. He's got an associate's degree in fire protection technology from Gaston College, a bachelor's in fire safety engineering technology from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and a master's degree in executive fire service leadership from Grand Canyon University. He's a designated Chief Fire Officer through the Center for Public Safety Excellence and is a graduate of the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer program. He worked his way up through the ranks and was promoted to the Chief of Asheville in November 2009. In this two-part interview, we're going to start by talking about a structure fire that they had at 445 Biltmore Avenue on July 28, 2011 that resulted in the tragic line-of-duty death of Captain Jeff Bowen. During the interview, Chief Burnette talks about the fateful day and the significant changes that has occurred in the Asheville Fire Department, changes that every fire department can benefit from. Some of the takeaways you're going to get from this two-part interview include, one, how the process of a facilitated debriefing helped the Asheville Fire Department identify 16 focus areas that represented opportunities for improvement. 2, the importance of having an air management protocol and changing the department's culture about air management. 3, the need to have the right staffing front-loaded in an incident scene, including a command aide or what they call a command technician to support the incident commander. 4, the value of completing critical task analysis to determine how many personnel are actually needed to perform vital tasks at incidents such as rapid intervention and incident management. 5, the importance of training personnel on how and when to call a mayday. And 6, the focus on health and wellness, ensuring the members are fit for duty, and how Asheville is allowing their firefighters to work out and giving them time to work out while on duty. Okay, let's get plugged into part 1 of our interview with Asheville Fire Chief Scott Burnette.
July 28, 2011. A day that we will never forget. The Asheville Fire Department, on that day at 12:26 p.m., just after lunchtime, we were dispatched to a report of a fire alarm activation at 445 Biltmore Avenue. 445 Biltmore Avenue was a structure that was 7 stories tall. It was in our medical district, and it had a number of medical offices. In that property, there were 22 medical practices and clinics, and at the time of the fire, there were over 200 occupants. The building was only partially sprinklered. It had 2 sprinkler heads on the second floor, and they were not involved in the fire. 150,000 square foot building, and it was protected by a fire alarm system, and that is what alerted us to the problem in that building on July 28th. It was the 6th alarm activation that we had responded to in the month of July in 2011. Our first arriving companies...
You mean 6 to that address, Scott?
What's that?
The 6th one to that address?
That is correct. We had,
okay.
That was the 6th time that we had responded for an automatic alarm activation to 445 Biltmore Avenue in the month of July.
Okay.
So when our first arriving units arrived on scene, they reported smoke and flames showing from the top floor, and they declared it as a working fire. We had always thought that an alarm activation, particularly in a commercial building during the day that had over 200 people inside that building, that the alarm activation would be followed up by a 911 call, multiple 911 calls, if it were an actual fire. We did not receive any other indication that there was a problem in that building other than the automatic alarm activation. We received no 911 calls. All the occupants were evacuating, assuming the fire department was on the way, and we were. So when the working fire was declared, the alarm was upgraded to a structure fire dispatch, which only added 2 more companies, a battalion chief and a safety officer. The initial response to the alarm activation was 2 engines, our squad, and a ladder. And the working fire dispatch added our rescue company, added another engine, added a battalion chief and a safety officer. So we had those units also dispatched. The initial company officer asked for a second alarm. That second alarm was missed, and so we were woefully understaffed the first minutes of that fire.
What do you mean
we
missed?
We did not get our second alarm. Yes, sir.
What do you mean missed? The second alarm was missed.
Right. The second alarm was missed. Second alarm was asked for by the first arriving company officer, and the telecommunicator was task saturated. It was alarm activation. There were other emergencies that single telecommunicator was managing, receiving calls, receiving information about other emergencies going on in the city, and then this alarm activation turns into a structure fire, and that telecommunicator gets really busy really quick. And so all of the tasks that telecommunicator had to accomplish, the request for a second alarm was missed by the telecommunicator.
Okay.
And it was not only the telecommunicator that missed that, it was everyone on scene, including myself. We all missed that we did not have that second alarm being dispatched. I never would have imagined that many people could have missed something as important as a second alarm transmission. There's lots of ears that hear that on the radio, and we all missed it, including myself, and it was because we were all task saturated. And so we were understaffed the first little bit of the incident. For about the first 15 or 20 minutes, it wasn't until the third alarm was called for that we actually got our second alarm units dispatched. Rescue 3, go ahead.
What was the total number on the scene? You had 2 engines, squad, a ladder. Then, when they filled out the alarm, a rescue, an engine, a ladder, the battalion chief, and a safety officer. How many total?
We had 24 people for the working fire, 24 total personnel on scene.
Was that before the third alarm?
That was our total for the first 20 minutes of the fire. We had 24 people that were working that incident.
Okay, so that's before the third alarm arrives.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
And those 24 people also included myself, who technically I was not on the initial alarm or the working fire dispatch. I self-dispatched. So I was that 24 included myself.
Okay.
Rescue 3 was dispatched once it was declared a working fire, and that company was led by Captain Jeff Bowen, and he had an engineer and 2 firefighters. However, one firefighter was off of that company doing some driver training in the western part of the city. So they responded with a 3-person company. When Rescue 3 arrived on scene, they were assigned to do a secondary search. They completed their secondary search. They came out of the building. They replenished their air supply, and their 4th firefighter, Jay Betancourt, who had been training, he met up with them. He drove his PO-15. So now they were back as a company of 4. They also had a member of Engine 1 who joined them as well. The other firefighter from Engine 1 was held in rehab due to elevated vital signs. And so the remaining member of Engine 1 teamed up with Rescue 3. So they went on their second entry as a crew of 5. Their assignment was to continue the secondary search on their second entry into the building. And companies were working on fire attack. We were having difficulty getting water to the fire. We were unable to get adequate water from the standpipe outlets, from the hose outlets in the north stairwell. Command had decided to abandon fire attack by using the standpipe outlets and use alternate means of putting water on the fire. We went through multiple attempts at solutions, pumping around the FCC. What we landed on as a final option was using our ladder truck as a static standpipe. And so we hooked up hoses to the ladder truck and entered the structure through windows from the outside and got first water on the fire that way. So while this was occurring, Rescue 3, their crew of 5, were completing their secondary search. And we started to get a number of radio transmissions that did not add up completely from Captain Bowen. Captain Bowen was a rock star in our department. He was just an amazing officer. His decisions weren't questioned because they were always the right decision. Everyone wanted to work with Captain Bowen. Everyone wanted Captain Bowen to be at their fire because he was that good. He always made the right decision at the right time. His first radio transmission that should have been a big warning sign for us was that he called command and reported that he could not get water out of the standpipe outlets on the north stairwell. That had already been communicated to everybody on scene. The incident commander had already abandoned that plan, and he was going back to that and reporting something that had already been reported. That was not like Captain Bowen at all. He was told that the water supply to the north stairwell was not adequate, and that we could not get water from the north stairwell, to abandon that and to come out of the building. Captain Bowen then called Engine Company 6, who was operating on the fire, and asked them if they needed any assistance. The next transmission, again, he goes back to the north stairwell on his radio transmission, saying that he needed that attack line charged. And incident commander called back again and said, "We cannot get water out of the north stairwell. Go out of the building." And Captain Bowen asks if Car 3, which is our safety officer, is attacking the fire, which is another unusual transmission for Captain Bowen to make, because the safety officer is clearly not someone who would be inside on a hose line attacking the fire. It's a single staffed resource with one person in an SUV, and so they clearly would not be inside attacking the fire. So these transmissions were warning signs that we did not pick up on as quickly as we should have. As Rescue 3 finally began to exit the building, they were all dangerously low on air. And the engineer and one of the firefighters, they were told by Captain Bowen to go on out because they had the least amount of air. And Captain Bowen was transferring information to another company officer on the fire floor. He decided, finally, after he transmitted that information, he decided to take himself and the remaining 2 members of Rescue 3 down that north stairwell to safety. They were low on air. Their low air alarms were going off. And Captain Bowen went right by the stairwell exit for reasons that we'll probably never fully know. The two firefighters that were with Captain Bowen, much to their surprise, seeing Captain Bowen go right by the exit, they took off after Captain Bowen. He was moving quick, and he was moving back toward the fire. They chased after him, and when they finally caught up with him, he was near some patient rooms, and he was bouncing off the walls, and he had a very confused look to him. The two firefighters realized that if they were going to get him out, that they would need to take control of Captain Bowen, which they did. As they were exiting, and there were very limited visibility, high heat, heavy smoke conditions that they were in, as they were exiting to get back to the north stairwell to safety, Captain Bowen freed himself from one of the firefighters. That firefighter went to the right when Captain Bowen went to the left. They could not see each other, and so he went to the right, attempting to go after Captain Bowen. He was found by members of Engine 6, this firefighter was, and they passed him out onto as the platform, and he was completely out of air. So his life was narrowly saved by the members of Engine 6. The two remaining members of Rescue 3 that were in the building, Captain Bowen and firefighter Jay Betancourt, at this point they're on their knees and they're completely out of air. Captain Bowen's completely out of air. Jay has just a few breaths left, and Captain Bowen asked Jay to buddy breathe. They hook up their buddy breathing apparatus. Their air is exhausted very quickly, and Captain Bowen loses consciousness. Jay Betancourt, he disconnects the buddy breathing apparatus so that he can move more quickly to find an exit. He's unable to find an exit immediately, and he is completely out of air, and he starts to shed PPE. He sheds his helmet. He sheds his face mask, his portable radio. He said that he wanted to be as quick and light as possible, and he felt like his equipment was starting to fail him. And so he didn't need his mask anymore since he was completely out of air, as an example, and so he discarded that to make himself lighter and to be able to move more quickly. He traveled about 200 feet down a hallway, extremely heavy smoke, limited visibility, without respiratory protection, and he finds the door to the south stairwell. When he finds this door, he opens up the door and he finds very good conditions in the stairwell for the first time. He is able to breathe fresh air. For the first time, he's able to see light and feel cool air on his face. He takes his axe and he places it next to the door because he wants to be able to find that door again. And rather than rescuing himself and going straight down that stairwell, he goes back, crawls another 200 feet, untenable conditions, no respiratory protection, to get Captain Bowen. This act clearly saved other firefighters' lives because we had firefighters on the fire floor at this time looking for both of them, and had Jay Betancourt not rescued Captain Bowen to the safety of the south stairwell, then we certainly would have injured and or lost additional firefighters trying to remove them both from the fire floor. So Jay is able to remove Captain Bowen into the south stairwell, and he goes unconscious also in the south stairwell. The pass alarm from Captain Bowen alerts firefighters to the south stairwell, and they come in from the third floor and find them both and remove them from the building. Unfortunately, Captain Bowen was brought out in cardiac arrest and transported to the hospital. He was resuscitated, attempted to be resuscitated for about 45 minutes, and then was declared deceased at that time. Jay Betancourt was flown to a burn center and had injuries to his lungs, and fortunately has been able to recover and come back to work, and is doing very well physically for going through that type of injury and being able to return to work as a firefighter.
What process did you guys go through to try to learn what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and how to prevent it from ever happening again.
The line of duty death is an unbelievably painful thing for a fire department to go through. It's very unique. Every human on the face of this earth has experienced loss. We've all experienced loss of people that are young. We've all experienced loss of people that are very close to us. But a line of duty death is so different than any kind of loss that any of us had experienced before for a lot of different reasons. So because of that pain that we were going through, it was very, very important to our fire department to improve, mainly because we didn't ever want to go through this again. And so we set out on a journey to improve our department. Our first thought was that we were going to be as hands-off to an investigation or to an evaluation or to an analysis as to what went wrong and what we can do better. We did not want to be in the guts of that because we felt that we would not get the improvement that we wanted because we would be biased. So we asked a lot of different groups to come in and do the analysis for us. It became clear early on that we were not going to be satisfied with the results from those different groups. They did an outstanding job and gave us some really, really good recommendations. However, we wanted more. We wanted more, and so it was clear that the most benefit that we would have as far as improving our department would come from our own post-incident analysis. We reached out to you, to Dr. Gassaway. Fortunately, we had already established a relationship earlier in 2011. You had come and shared with us some training, some situational awareness training, and within months we had this tragedy, and so we were able to reach back out to you to assist us with a facilitated debrief, which was very beneficial. That facilitated debrief that you led included individual sessions, small group sessions, a large group session, and we just captured our strengths, our successes, the challenges and opportunities that took place as a result of July 28, 2011. What came of that, were 16 different focus areas.
Hey Scott, can we stop for 1 second?
Sure.
I want to make sure that the listeners understand that this was not a stress debrief. I don't want it to be confused with like a post-incident stress debrief event. This was an operational debrief where the companies got to tell their stories about how things played out from their individual perspectives, and then we just kind of put the whole picture together.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay, 16.
So we had 16 different focus areas that were a result of this facilitated debrief, and this was much different than a critical incident stress management debrief, that type of event, which was certainly for a different purpose. This was an operational review that you led for our department so that we could come up operationally what focus areas that we could improve upon. And we came up with those 16 different focus areas, and it was everything from air management to radio usage. 16 different areas that were extremely important for us to improve on because we could have done those a lot better on July 28th. There are several of those that we have learned every fire department in the country has the same struggle that we did with these areas. And so when we're talking with other fire departments, we really like to focus on those six, the big six that seem to be very common throughout the fire service in our country. And those 6 are air management, staffing, critical tasking, mayday training, and health and wellness. Including that critical tasking is both for rapid intervention and the incident management team. And so those are probably the 6 biggest areas that we improved on. And we've done a lot of research in the last 3 years identifying what are best practices and what are best for the Asheville Fire Department. And we put those
Scott,
in play.
Hold on just a second. I was making some notes. And is health and wellness 2 or 1? Are they together or are they separate? Together. All right. Then I only captured 5 of them. I got air management, staffing, critical tasking, mayday, health and wellness. Which one did I miss?
No, you've got them all. But within critical tasking, it's RIT and incident management.
Oh, okay.
So critical tasking or rapid intervention and critical tasking of incident management. So
okay.
Yeah, it's 5 broad categories, but the 6 things to talk about. So.
Okay.
You want me to restate those and just separate out RIT?
Nope. I'll put them in the show notes, and I got the notes now. I only had 5, and I thought, man, I missed one, and I didn't want to miss one. I got them now.
We put these improvements into play, and they've made a real difference for our department. From July 28, 2011, is sharing the information that we have learned with as many people as possible in the fire service, so that they perhaps won't have to go through what we went through. They can learn from our improvements and make those improvements in their fire department and have better outcomes for the department, a safer each time they go to a structure fire.
So what are some examples of, you talk about these big 6. Tell me something you do differently today than you did on July 28th.
On July 28th, related to air management, we did not have an air management culture at the Asheville Fire Department. We do today, and it's a very strong culture. What we have found out is very few fire departments have an air management guideline or an air management philosophy. That surprises me now, but we certainly were in that place 3 years ago. Every fire department needs to have a very strong air management culture. What we operated with up to 2011, our air supply dictated how long we could work. And that was a wrong approach. If we entered a structure, we knew that once our low air alarm went off, it was time to exit. We got away with that for a long time because most of our fires, like every department in the country for the most part, they fight single-family homes. The fires that we have are in single-family homes. And when your air supply gets low, you're within 5 steps of an exit, and you never have an issue of running out of air. We took that culture into a 7-story building that was 150,000 square feet, and we had multiple radio transmissions of firefighters working inside the structure with their vibe alerts going off. We've changed that significantly in that we use the heads-up display as our guide for our air management. We have to have a completely full bottle, which with the style of SCBA that we have is 2 green lights on our heads-up display inside our mask. And so we don't ever go inside unless we have those 2 green lights. We have a completely full bottle. And we monitor our work times, which just like we do on a hazmat, which we always did really well on a hazmat incident with an air management officer, we do the same for a structure fire now, in that we monitor, okay, how long did it take to get to the location where we're going to work, whether that be to search, whether that be to attack the fire, knowing that we're going to need more than that time to come out. And then also, how much time is it going to take us to accomplish the task, and then how much do we have in reserve if an emergency occurs. We always did that really well for hazmat incidents, but we never did it for a structure fire. Now we have a command technician, a chief's aide, that's tracking all of those things on the outside. And so when we go in with those completely full bottle, once we go to amber, which indicates that we have half of our air supply left. We have 4,500 PSI cylinders, and so when we get down to 2,000, the LED changes to amber. Once we are at amber, we are leaving the structure at that time. We don't wait for it to turn amber and then leave. We already have that planned, and we are tracked by the command technician, the chief's aide, to let us know when it's time to exit because of our air supply. However, once it turns to amber, one member of the company is amber, then, which indicates 2,000 PSI, then the entire company comes out of the structure. If one member of the company or more has their low air alarm activate, which is red on the heads-up display and the vibra alert going off, then the company officer or the firefighter, if someone on that company, is going to get on the radio and declare a low air emergency. A low air emergency in our department is a precursor for an RIT deployment. RIT stands up, they get ready to deploy. If that company is not outside within 60 seconds of the low air emergency declaration, then it becomes an RIT activation. RIT goes in and gets the company out of the structure. So that level of air management culture has made a huge difference in the safety of our firefighters. One big concern that we had going into that was we thought that, well, we're just not going to have enough time to work if we're coming out with half of a bottle. We found that is certainly not the case. We have adequate work time. We're still putting fires out. We're rotating companies more frequently, and we're doing that, and it's much more safe, but the efficiency and the effectiveness is not changed at all.
Outstanding. What are some of the staffing changes?
One thing that we mistakenly had thought was that minimum staffing meant how many people were assigned to an apparatus, and that if we had a big fire that people could meet on scene. Minimum staffing, there's no fire department in the country that will tell you we've got enough firefighters. We need more firefighters in our companies. We need more firefighters in our departments. We need more firefighters to be able to respond. But when we talk about minimum staffing in this context, minimum staffing means minimum staffing. Whatever your department staffs its apparatus, if you meet on scene in POVs, if you arrive as a company on the vehicle, whatever it is, that you need to establish what your true minimum staffing is. I have also been a volunteer firefighter for a very long time, and our members, for the most part, meet on scene in POVs. What we would do typically is we would do our training in the evening, and we would have 30, 35 firefighters attend this training session, and we would do a drill with 30 or 35 firefighters. We would go to a fire, and we would have 12 or 15 firefighters. What we should have been doing is doing our training with our true minimum staffing, which was 12 or 15 firefighters on the fire ground. Here at Asheville, that same logic, when we did our training drills, the entire company was there. So if we had 4 people assigned to a company, we'd go out to the training ground, and we would do an evolution with all 4 members of the company, including the engineer who would suit up and do a high-rise drill with the company. We'd go to a real fire, and we would short that company to where they would only arrive by 3, because one of the other ones, like we did on July 28th, we're out driver training. So we really only the engineer stayed with the truck to supply the FTC, and so we only had 2. So when we did our training, we trained with 4 firefighters, but we actually operated with 2. If we were going to operate that way, then we should have done our training with our true minimum staffing, which was 2. And so that was the context of minimum staffing means minimum staffing. No matter what your minimum staffing is, and we always advocate for more because we need more, but whatever it is, train with that. If you're responding with 2 firefighters, train with only 2. If you're responding with 4, train with only 4. If you're responding with 12 or 15 that all arrive on the scene in POVs, train with that and stagger those firefighters out as to true arrival time, so that your minimum staffing is what it really is. If you have more firefighters on the scene after the training for the real fire, that's just gravy. That makes things safer. It makes it more effective. But the fire service seems to do it in reverse. We train for the absolute maximum that we will ever have, rather than the minimum, and that's how we need to train.
I've seen that so many times play out that way. They set up an evolution and staff it with 30 people, and they're not going to have 30 people arrive at a scene of a fire at all, if at all. Certainly not instantly, but then they got this instant, bam, 30 staffing. You got the attack line, the backup line, the search team, the vent team, the RIT team. They're all here. It's so unrealistic. That's such a powerful point here, Scott. Thank you.
The other important thing related to staffing, and this gets into our critical tasking, what we did with rapid intervention and our incident management team. There is a lot of research and a lot of data on the staffing that is needed for fireground operations. A lot of good, those studies have been done. I guess Dallas probably did the first one back in the 1970s, but all the way to the research that was completed to accomplish 1710 and 1720, to the most recent NIST studies. There's a lot of fireground studies that talk about staffing. One thing that has not been explored or researched as much as the fireground tasks are the command function and the rapid intervention function. Phoenix did a huge study after Brett Tarver's line of duty death, but beyond that, there's not a lot of critical tasking for RIT. And so as the fire service, we don't have a lot of knowledge base on what is the correct number to staff an RIT with, outside of Phoenix groundbreaking research that they did. When it comes to incident command, there's even fewer studies as to what is an adequately staffed incident management team for a structure fire. All departments will have an incident commander. Most departments will also have a safety officer, and that's typically it for a structure fire. Departments need to have the ability to expand quickly and immediately into division and group supervisor function on the fire ground, even for a single-family structure fire. A single-family structure fire, as long as it's bread and butter, then an incident commander and a safety officer, you will get by with that. And we got by with it for a long time. But add one complexity into that fire, and you're going to need a division or a group supervisor. Also, the chief's aide role or command technician. That is such an important role. All throughout my fire service career, being a firefighter here in the South, I knew what a chief's aide was, and my view of what a chief's aide was in departments in the Northeast that were blessed with a lot more staffing than we had in the South, then the chief's aide was someone who drove the chief around, and that was my understanding of what a chief's aide was. I had no understanding of how critical that role is on the fire ground for firefighter safety. It's amazing that fire departments operate today without that chief's aide or without that command technician role. It's that important. We've been using that for 3 years, and it's made our fireground operations so much more safe and so much more efficient, having just that one position staffed.
Scott,
we don't.
I'm going to assume that since you created and staffed the command technician position, the feedback that you received from your command level officers is they feel far less task saturated and far less overwhelmed with information processing because the technician is there to help them?
Completely, 100%. It's amazing. We in our country, we have redundancy for many things, we had our airline industry, the planes, and I know nothing about flying airplanes, but from what I do understand is the airplanes, for the most part, fly themselves. But yet we still have a pilot, and we also have a co-pilot. And my understanding of the reason that we have that is if there were anything to happen to the pilot, then we still have somebody there that can safely land that plane, because it's that important, because there's hundreds of people on that aircraft.
Yep.
However, we don't do the same thing in the fire service, and there is a huge risk to our firefighters, and we don't have that redundancy. The command technician, that chief's aide, I use those terms interchangeably. I'll switch to command technician because that's what we call it here in Asheville. That command technician role is such a blessing for that incident commander.
Okay, we're going to conclude part 1 of the interview here and pick it up again next week with Chief Burnette when he shares with us why he thinks the command technician is such a blessing for the incident commander. Before I close this episode, I want to take just a moment to thank the recent program hosts. Your efforts to bring the situational awareness and decision-making classes to your region are greatly appreciated. Arvada Fire Department, Castle Rock Fire Department, Maple Grove Fire Department, Firehouse World Conference, and the Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College. If you're interested in attending an upcoming SA Matters tour stop, just head over to SA Matters website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage. It says Upcoming Events Schedule. There are roughly 60 events, give or take, that are scheduled or pending for 2015. And here's hoping there's one near you and we'll get a chance to meet up. There are a few things that humble me as much in life as standing before a room full of firefighters and sharing my knowledge about situational awareness and giving them some tangible, immediately usable takeaways and have them show an interest in that message. Thank you very much. I'm working hard to recruit new members to the SA Matters community of learners too, and I'd like to have you join us. There are over 5,000 that have joined on to improve their situational awareness and their decision-making under stress. Membership's free, so you can sign up, and when you do, you get a special report that I've created called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. It's a short and sweet list of the 25 situational awareness lessons that I'll share during my live programs as well. If you're not a member, head over to SA Matters website, click on the red box on the right side of the page. It says free membership and get your best practices report. So that's what the red box says. Just click on it. I want to also remind you that every episode of the radio show has a corresponding show notes page on the SA Matters website. The most recent episodes will scroll on the front page of the website, about the 8 most recent episodes. To get the older episodes, you just access the show notes by typing in samatters.com / and then enter the episode that you want to listen to. So, for example, if you wanted to access episode 21, open a browser, enter samatters.com / 21. That'll take you to the page. It contains the link for that episode. You can play it right there on the desktop and access the show notes that contain a list of the takeaways for that episode. And there's information about the show sponsor and contact information for the guests. If they provide any pictures or videos or audio, I put that in the show notes as well. You can also subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher Radio, and I'll mention more about that in a moment. If you want to get connected with me on social media, you can follow @RichGasaway or @SAMatters on Twitter. On those feeds, I'll share out messages related to safety and occasionally some interesting tidbits about my personal life, my family, and my travels and things like that. When you're getting connected with me on Twitter, it's guaranteed to be 100% authentically me, genuine, warts and all. Sometimes I misspeak and say things that I meant to say a different way, and people will call me on it, and it's all good. It's just a matter of what you can get out in 140 characters. But thanks to the 13,000 who have connected with me on Twitter, I appreciate that. You can also get connected with me on Facebook by liking the SA Matters page, or on LinkedIn by searching for Rich Gasaway, and there are about 8,000 connections on Facebook and LinkedIn. Well, that's it. Episode 43 is complete. Thank you to Asheville Fire Chief Scott Burnette for sharing the lessons learned in Asheville following Captain Bowen's death and the many changes that your department has undertaken. I have visited many fire departments where following a line of duty death, nothing has changed. Nothing. Asheville serves as a stellar example of an organization honoring their fallen brother by learning and changing. Thank you to our sponsor, Midwest Fire, and thank you, our listeners, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to be interviewed on the show, visit SA Matters and click on the Contact Us link. And thank you in advance for sharing your lessons learned so others may live. If you like the show, head over to iTunes or Stitcher Radio, search for SA Matters Radio, SA Matters Radio, and subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback. If you like the show, I'd really appreciate if you give it a 5-star review as well. Not only will that motivate me, but it'll help others to find the show. If you've been inspired and want to learn more about situational awareness, consider becoming a member of the SA Matters community. It's free. And when you sign up, you get that special report I mentioned earlier, 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. To claim your free gift, head over to samatters.com, click on the red box on the right side of the home page. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.